Introduction of guests. Mississippi Mills.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to introduce special guests from Ottawa that came here today to meet with our health critic Christine Elliott and deputy critic Bill Walker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Jennifer and Deborah Wyatt from the Types Autistic Training Facility. Dr. Jeff Sherman, psychologist from Ottawa, here to speak about autism. And John Light from John Baird's office in Ottawa.
Andrew Dear Light.
Member from Park, say hi, Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce from Access Alliance, Julie Chamberlain, Nasima Dar, Pinky Paglangayan, Mafasal Hauk, and Sheila Chu. And also from the Society of Energy Professionals, we have Judith Logan and Guntis Berzins. So welcome to Queen's Park.
The member from Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to welcome the Society of Energy Professionals to Queen's Park and to recognize all those who are in the gallery, including President Scott Travers and Frank Pierce from my riding of Scarborough Southwest. The Society is here to help members understand the issues facing Ontario's energy generation and transmission sector. I hope members will take time to speak to them and enjoy the reception at the end of the day in the legislative dining room. Thank you.
Further introductions? Our House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome a good friend from the great riding of Kitchener Centre, Ken Sylvester, who's here with his granddaughter, Caitlin, who's a grade 5 student who's studying civics. So they're here today to learn about good government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to introduce someone that's actually won a very big spot in heaven because she puts up with me all the time, and she's the biggest reason why I have the privilege of serving here. I'd like to introduce my wife, Pauline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to welcome Reverend David Menhong Kim and his wife, Esther, and along with them guests for a delegation from South Korea. Reverend Sue Ok-young, who is the former director of the Korea National Reconciliation Committee, and also Mr. Nok Kwak, the chair for the Advanced Political Society in Korea. And I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Jay Chong, who is executive director of the Dr. Schofield Memorial Foundation, Julia Chung, who is the senior deaconess of the church, and Hee Yoon Young, who is the volunteer with the Dr. Schofield Memorial Foundation. And I believe they are touring the legislature, so soon we will have them come in and partake of our question period.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock, please. Before I recognize the member from Hamilton East Stony Creek, I'd like to announce that earlier this morning, just before the proceedings started, unanimous consent was granted so that no one else gets the idea that they can just start dressing like that anytime they want. The member from Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite all the members of Parliament and to the Battle of Stony Creek this weekend. We have the privilege of having over 800 to 1,000 reenactors. My portrayal in the battle will be an artillery captain in the 8th Regiment of Her Majesty's Royal Grenadiers. And also, if I didn't introduce my wife, I'd be in big trouble. She helped me get in this. My wife, Carol. So it's going to be a great weekend. We're expecting thousands of people. Thank you, Speaker.
The member from Halton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and hello to Joe. Welcome back.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce two constituents from my riding, Andre Ramasrup and Scott Travers, who are here with the Society of Professional Engineers. Welcome to Queen's Park.
York Southwestern or Scarborough Rouge River?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome a constituent of mine, Mr. Ahmed Abdullah, who is the parent of one of our pages here, Lamiha Abdullah. He's here visiting with us in the East Gallery. Thank you very much.
Further introductions? The Minister responsible for seniors.
Speaker, my wife's supposed to be here with a delegation from my riding, attending the Italian flag raising today. Probably the traffic is holding them up, but they are here to assist and enjoy the celebration. And as well, I want to invite everyone in the House to join us for the Italian flag, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Further introduction from York Southwestern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure to welcome here at Queen's Park Julie Pontarolo. She is the mother of Jessica Pontarolo, the wonderful page from the great writing of York Southwestern. And Mrs. Pontarolo will be joining us this morning in the public gallery. Thank you. Grazie.
Further introduction? Prego. Member from Nipissing.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to introduce Virginia Mora and David Morrow, who are here for the Italian flag raising this morning.
I'd like to introduce from the riding of Brant, Graham Malcolm, being accompanied by his wife Victoria, here to see the workings of Queen's Park. I welcome them here from the riding of Brant. And as most members can see, my other brother, Joe Peters, is here, and his son, Nick. Welcome. Thank you for here. And depending on whether or not a member from Hamilton East Stony Creek is able to sustain himself in the House today, I may let him dress like that for the entire time. It is now time for question period. Now time for question period. The member from Newmarket, Aurora.
Speaker, my question is to the Premier. Speaker, on February the 19th, just a few weeks ago, here is what the Premier told Ontarians and this legislature through the Lieutenant Governor in her speech from the throne, and I'll quote, "For the benefit of the entire province, your government intends to work with opposition parties in a spirit of renewed cooperation to get the people's business done." Speaker, we want to take the Premier up on that offer. And in that same spirit of cooperation, I'd like to ask the Premier, will she agree to strike a select committee of the legislature so that we can help the government find the additional $2 billion to pay for transit without burdening taxpayers and businesses of this province?
Questions? Premier?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And, I really wish that as a result of the conversations that I had had with the Leader of the Opposition and the opportunities that we had to exchange ideas, that once the budget was introduced, that there wasn't an immediate response that the opposition was not going to support the budget. Without even reading the budget, Mr. Speaker, that was the response. So I truly believe that I have reached out, that I have done my best to work with all members of the legislature, and I will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that for decades, there has been no commitment on the part of the provincial government to have a dedicated revenue stream to build transit. And the member opposite knows full well.
Answer.
He was a Minister of Transportation. There was no dedicated revenue stream for transit, Mr. Speaker. There needs to be, and we're going to make that happen.
Supplementary.
Speaker, that's precisely why we're making the offer that we're making. That spirit of renewed cooperation seems to have evaporated, or is it just in order to prop yourself up to stay in government? I want to read further from that throne speech, Speaker. Quote, "Your new government believes that complex times require thoughtful, collaborative solutions." We agree, and that's why we are asking the Premier to take our offer very seriously. Why will the Premier not agree to strike that select committee of all parties of this legislature so that we can get to work while she's having her conversations with finding that $2 billion in savings and waste right across this government so we can get on with the construction and dedicate $2 billion of revenue to transit in this province?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So a few weeks ago, what the members opposite were asking us to do was to focus on implementing the Drummond Commission reports, Drummond Commission recommendations, Mr. Speaker, and do that transformation of government that was laid out in Don Drummond's report. We're doing that, Mr. Speaker, and the 60% of the recommendations are already in the works or have been implemented, Mr. Speaker. We continue to do the transformation of government. That is finding savings. That is constraining the cost. That is constraining our spending, Mr. Speaker. We're doing all that. And all of that is not going to deliver $2 billion a year to deal with the congestion issues in the GTHA. The member opposite knows that, Mr. Speaker. He's been a Minister of Transportation. He knows that that has not been a focus of the provincial government for decades. We need to make it a focus, Mr. Speaker, because people need to be able to get around the GTHA to their homes and to their work.
Member from Renfrew will come to order. Final supplementary.
Speaker, February 19th was not that long ago. I remember the ceremony here, and I remember the awesome commitment that this Premier made to cooperation. I want to read from the closing remarks of that throne speech. I quote, "All parties and each member will be encouraged to contribute to this process to make their insights known. Your new government hopes that ideas will be put forward with optimism and purpose, and that voices will not be raised solely for the pursuit or retention of power. Your government is committed to finding a real creative solution to the issues we face." And then it goes on to say, Speaker, to do this, it will direct its efforts across the aisle. That's from your throne speech, Speaker. Speaker, I ask the Premier one more time. In all seriousness, I ask, why will she not agree to the creative idea collaboratively to work with opposition parties, strike that select committee so that we can get on with our work and fund transit in this province?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I have appreciated the opportunity to meet with the Leader of the Opposition. We have had a number of very good conversations, Mr. Speaker, and there are some things that it would be great if we could find a way to cooperate on. For example, Mr. Speaker, I have already mentioned, it would have been great for the opposition, the PCs, to have read the budget before rejecting it. It would have been great, Mr. Speaker, for the opposition not to have rejected the throne speech. It would be wonderful, Mr. Speaker, if every single piece of legislation was not being stalled in this legislature. Legislation that would protect kids from cancer, Mr. Speaker. Legislation that would support Ontario farmers. Legislation that would bring the budget through the process. It would be terrific if we could have that kind of cooperative working relationship, Mr. Speaker. We're working to constrain expenses. We're working to transform government, Mr. Speaker. We also have to work to invest in transit.
New question. A member from the P.N. Carleton.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Appreciate the opportunity to question the Premier today. Last summer, your government handed over hiring rights in our schools to the provincial unions. As a result of Bill 115, we said we would support the bill, but we demanded that the hiring provision be stricken. The government said they would do that, but after the bill passed, they snuck in a regulation